Good morning, everyone. We are going to start our webinar shortly. So get a cup of coffee, make yourself relaxed. It's going to be a really great session today. So we'll start probably in a minute or two, giving more people to sign on to the webinar. Good morning again. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's 10:30 on August 19th, and I am welcoming you to Caregiver Coalition's session called Driving, a Difficult Decision Made Easier. Thank you so much for joining us today. You're free to take notes, but know that this session is being recorded, so you can always go back and look at the information that's being shared by our presenter. Let me go over a few housekeeping items for everybody. The session's being recorded, as I mentioned, and it's going to be available on the Caregiver Coalition website, caregivercoalition.org. And as I mentioned, it's not only this session, but other sessions you can tune into if you've missed them. So we're having everybody remain muted during the presentation. We will be having a Q&A session at the very end. So we have our fabulous communication specialist, Gabby Zaragoza, who's going to be monitoring the question box. So if you have something that it's a burning question, know that we will get to it at the very end of Peggy's presentation. We sometimes have technical difficulties, so if that does happen, please be patient. We'll get back online as soon as we can, but it looks like everything's going to be pretty smooth today, but you never know how that goes. Following the webinar, as I mentioned, you will receive the recording along with all the session resources that are going to be shared today. So just a quick overview, the Caregiver Coalition is a program of Elder Source that works to provide caregivers in Northeast Florida with all vital information. And you can get that through these events, our in-person events, virtual events, our quarterly newsletter, and all the informative social media posts that Gabby does for the coalition. The mission of the coalition is to collectively elevate caregiving and improve the quality of life for caregivers in Northeast Florida. Our vision is where all caregivers have the knowledge and access to resources that support you and those that you're caring for. I think one of the most common things we hear when we're out in the community is, I don't even know where to start for help. So this is what the coalition is designed for you, to give you the information and resources so you don't feel so lost. We have over 20 organizations part of the coalition. They're all working together to support and ease the role of caregivers. And at the very end, I'm going to give a shout out to all those members, and you'll find information about each of them on the website. As I mentioned, this is a session of the Easier Said Than Done workshops. We had session number 1, Managing Difficult Behaviors, with Francine Parfit, retired from Mayo, talking about how difficult it is often to manage the behaviors of your loved one. Again, it's easier said than done when people are trying to give you advice. Engaging your loved one in meaningful activities. Again, another great 1-hour session. And minding your mental health, taking care of yourself, making sure that you have got yourself lined up to do anything you can do to prevent caregiver burnout. So these are the sessions that are available on Caregiver Coalition website, along with other ones. So again, if you've missed them, don't feel that you've missed out, because they're there for you, as well as the resources on each of the sessions. So today we have our session, Driving, a Difficult Decision Made Easier. When the Caregiver Coalition got together earlier this year to plan out our sessions, It came up often over and over again, conversations that are very hard, making things happen in your family, people giving you advice, and you roll your eyes and you say, yes, easy for you to say, or easier said than done. So that has been the theme of all of these sessions. And I think driving is really one of those tough conversations that family members have to have, and it's very difficult because it means you're giving up your independence. It means you're giving up some control. So hopefully this session with our subject matter expert is going to give you some tools to hopefully have that conversation be a little bit easier for you and your family. So I want to recognize and introduce Peggy Gannon, and she's going to share some great information with you, along with who she is and what she does at Brooks Rehab. Welcome, Peggy.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it very much. So the topic today is love, safety, and the road ahead, a guide to driving cessation. You can go to the next slide. So who am I? Well, I'm Peggy Gannon. I work at Brooks Rehabilitation. I've been here for many years. I started the driving program, or managed it, since 1998. So I had child number 3, came back to work, and then started doing the driving program. But in addition to that, these are the different roles that I have in my life. I'm a daughter, or was. I'm a sister, aunt, mother, therapist, a friend, and also a widow. So we each have different roles in our lives that we interact with other individuals. So kind of looking at yourself, who are you? Are you in this situation? Are you the wife? Are you the husband, the support person, the caregiver who might be enlisted, as a family friend even? Next. So life is about change. And change is not always something that we expect, but if it's not changing, we're not really living, actually. So we have changes in who we are as a person and what we're able to do, or maybe even our belief systems, change in our role. Maybe there's where I was the strong person and the one who always did everything. Now I'm the person who has to be asking others for assistance or help. My health, change in the health can have a big impact on people's lives and what is going on with them. All right. Oh, slide. So I like this slide. Hopefully you can see it. In there is Bear, and the little kids in the background are going, who's driving? Oh my God, Bear is driving. How can that be? So driving is a privilege. It's not necessarily a right. None of us were born with a driver's license in our diaper. It doesn't come that way. We had to earn that privilege. But driving has many, many facets and meanings to us. So it's a means of freedom, our independence, and mobility. I think it is very difficult for the elderly, and it doesn't really matter. And that's just thrown in there. I think it's difficult for anyone to think about giving up this privilege because it's very ingrained in our being. People will come into the office and they always say, I still have my driver's license. It's in their pocket. They may not have been using it, but it is a sense of pride. It's a sense of accomplishment, but it also represents something longevity-wise in their life that they've been doing. So it has great importance. All right, next. Next slide. So the question that we're here for is your family member, or it could be your friend, is at increased risk for unsafe driving? Okay, slide. So I have kind of tried to break down all our functional abilities that we have that we may or may not think about. These are the things that can affect driving. First and foremost, vision is so important. And that vision, it can be your acuity, which is how clearly we see things. And that could be up close or distance. Person could have visual field loss. Sometimes that occurs with vision diseases like macular degeneration, or you may have central vision loss if it's glaucoma. Sorry, I got my things reversed. Central or peripheral vision loss with macular or glaucoma. Contrast sensitivity deficits, people don't really think about that, but maybe going from bright lights to dim lights, people will then lose what they can see. So that contrast, then suddenly they're not able to see the road as well. Attention, we all know about you have to have attention in order to drive. Perceptual skills, can I see where things are placed, how close something is to me? Memory plays a key role. Decision making, knowing when or when not to go, reaction timing, processing that information, and then just overall cognitive impairments. That's our judgment, reasoning, and problem solving. All of these are those functional things that we kind of take for granted sometimes and don't really itemize them out too much. Next slide. Okay. So from a medical standpoint, people come, I always like to think of it as we have luggage that come with us. And that luggage is what affects us. So we can have medical luggage. Individuals can have an amputation, which may then affect their ability to operate the pedals. The cognitive disorders, obviously, with the dementia, the Alzheimer's, cataracts, or other vision related, diabetes, falls, strokes, neurological, and medication. All these things kind of together. So somebody could have one issue or they could have multiple issues. That combination then can heighten the difficulties that they might have with driving. And so it's important that we don't ignore them, that we attend to them. It's not always the most fun thing to do, but you do have to look at your whole or that person that we're working with. All right, next. So there's research for everything, but NHTSA and other organizations, they have put together that it's not the presence of the disease, but the limitation that it causes, which hinders the person's ability to operate or mobility or drive safely or functionally. Someone can have dementia or mild cognitive impairment and still drive very safely because their awareness, their knowledge base is still intact. I firmly believe that, but it is when it becomes a part of their lifestyle that it affects how they're making decisions. That's where the problem becomes. It's not the fact that they have it, but how advanced it might be, and then the individual's ability to be able to compensate for it also. All right. Next slide. Yep. So there is evidence to support that impairments in one or more of these areas of a functional capability significantly increases a driver's risk of a crash. An older driver is more likely to be seriously injured or killed. And that is true, is that the more issues you have with the medical conditions or the cognitive impairments, your likelihood of getting injured or that person's is going to be, doubled or tripled even. Most of the time, and I think I cover this in another slide, is that intersection management is really one of the bigger issues too. Next slide. So key facts. And there are several of them that have been provided, as I said, through NHTSA. Although many say older drivers self-regulate their driving behavior, it's not enough to keep the crash rates down. That's because they're not the only individuals on the road, right? So you've got your 20-year-olds, your 16-year-olds, all age groups are out there. So the individual may be regulating themselves, but there's other factors out there. And sometimes that speed of processing is really where the difficulties present. So the crash rate is related to physical and cognitive changes associated with driving. Older driver crashes tend to be related to inattention or slow perception and response. And you're probably going to hear me say that over and over so that you get tired of hearing it, but it is inattention to what's going on, but how quickly we can respond and react, not just by reaction time for stopping for something, but also when we enter into traffic. By the time we process what's coming up, that car has coming at us so quickly that we may or may not have been able to process it as fast as we should. So older driver crashes are often multiple vehicle events that occur at intersections and involve the left-hand turns. Um, it's dangerous. People think there is nothing coming, but unfortunately, coming down the road as someone who is speeding, and I think if you are driving here in Jacksonville, you are well aware that people run those red lights constantly. It is not like it only happens occasionally. I think this morning on my way to work already, I saw two different people. Traffic is dead stopped. That light is clearly red, but that person is still flying through the intersection. So even though that driver may be making it on the turn when they're supposed to, they're not processing quickly enough that somebody else is not doing what they're supposed to. So, and those left-hand turns are definitely more dangerous. Next slide. So there is a high fatality for drivers 65 and older are involved in approximately 8,000 fatal crashes annually, accounting roughly for 20% of all traffic crashes nationwide. If you think about it, not necessarily, but older drivers are typically health challenges. The accident, even the impact from an airbag can then affect them a lot more than maybe somebody who's younger. How they are hit in the vehicle, those things contribute to them being more fatal for them than for other individuals. Prescription medications, I can't say enough about how medications, you might have been taking the same thing for many years, but our bodies change and our responses to it, or there may be a combination of medications that are then affecting and cause impaired driving. So it is important that there is someone who is overseeing the medication management, you know, be it a family member, or if you have a geriatric physician who is aware of everything that the person might be taking. All right, next slide. Again, not to hound on it, but older drivers and their passengers account for about 66% of the death and crashes involving an older driver, largely due to age-related physical fragility. The population of adults 65 and older increased by 28% over a recent decade, meaning more older Americans are retaining their licenses for longer. It's just the fact. We've got better health care than we did before. People are living much longer. I know here we have seen at Brooks, where I work, we have seen clients well into their 90s who are still operating and driving a motor vehicle. And they don't, perceive that there's an issue or a problem. And some of them are in good health and they actually do drive well. But our population is aging, and the fact that people need to have mobility in order to stay independent is key factor in it too. Jacksonville doesn't, it has some transportation in place, but it's not like a large city with a subway system, but there are means to help people, but people still feel like they need to be operating that car and driving it. All right, next slide. All right. Not sure if anyone is aware or not, but most of us know we have to renew our driver's license, and it comes up in a certain period of amount of time. But once an individual is 80 years or older, the license validity only goes to 6 years. But also, all drivers over 80 or 80 or over must pass a vision renewal. The test can be taken at the driver's license office, or they can have their physician or optician fill out the form and then take it with them. So a lot of times people put off going to seeing about getting their cataracts removed or taken care of, but it is really important because it does affect how clearly you can see and manage in traffic. But there are vision requirements that have been added. Go ahead. So what we're really here for is what to look for. Okay. So we have family, we have friends, whoever it is that you're involved in. There's observations. There are things that we can just look at to notice that there is a change in this individual. On the other observations, their grooming. How well are they taking care of themselves? Are they showering? Are they not? Are they not eating properly? Are they having challenges getting up in and out of chairs? Are they having problems with walking? Have they been having a lot of falls lately? Do they have difficulty with visual tasks? Maybe they're looking for something, or it's right in front of them, and obviously they're just not seeing it. Difficulty with attention, memory, comprehension, and those are pretty obvious. Someone repeats themselves constantly, you provide them instructions and they're really not understanding it. If you are concerned, these are just some general questions you can ask that person. How much do you actually drive? A lot of people will say, I just go up to the store, which is within, a block or two from the home. Do you transport other people? Do you have passengers? Are you transporting the grandchildren? Are you taking your neighbors up to the store? Do you have any problems when you drive? Has that individual ever gotten lost when they should? And by getting lost, I don't mean talking about someplace that they haven't been to before, because that's a challenge for most of us. We're not sure exactly where something's located, but this would be someplace that is familiar. They have been to it many times and they should know how to get there. Have you gotten any tickets in the past 2 years? Typically, when I ask someone, I go back for 5 years to see if there's a pattern. Maybe they were always a speeder, and that was something that was happening. So you want to kind of get an idea. Are there tickets? Any of those issues? Next slide. Oh. All right. So on that last one, the other question on there too that I missed was, have you had any near misses? And that when we do an evaluation, we do ask people, have you had any tickets, traffic accidents, recorded, not recorded, mailboxes, garages, because those near misses actually count too, because someone's car could be dinged up on all sides and they don't remember how those got there. Those are also a little red flag. So how do memory impairments and decreased cognition play into decreased driving skills? Gradual memory loss, the symptoms, decline in ability to perform routine tasks. Maybe they were always the person who could pay the bills, do fix dinner, clean thing, or make and repairs around the home. Are they disoriented to time and space? Not sure what the day of the week is, what the year is, what time. Difficulty in learning new information, or even loss of language and communication. So the effect that these things that you're seeing in your person, how do they affect their driving? Well, they could forget where they're going and why. That has happened more often than not. People will say, well, I thought I was going somewhere, or maybe they're on the way to the doctor's office, and they'll call the doctor's office and say, I'm, not sure what time or where you're located. And then that person has been driving there for years. So that is a big red flag. Confusion over how to operate the motor vehicle. They may be okay in their car, but if let's say they might have to get a rental or something, if there is some confusion over how to operate it. The gas pedal and the brake pedal, that's typically where we'll see confusion, where the turn signal is located, and how to put the car into gear. Unfortunately, we've got so many new cars out there. Some have knobs that turn it into park. Some have a gear lever that shifted into it. So it can be a little confusing, but hopefully once they're acclimated, are they still confused over it? Do they get lost in their own street, forget to be back at a certain time, can't learn a route to and from new destinations, difficulty adjusting to the vehicle, or even just a situation, forget the meaning of words or symbols. So where that is that if their language is lost, they may or may not recognize what specific signs. I think the merge signs are the ones that give most people challenges, because there are several that have different meanings to them. So are they having confusion over that or not understanding? All right, go ahead. All right. So there's still several. So in addition to the other ones, changes in the person's personality, including appropriate behavior, loss of interest, or changes in mood. I think the one next to the effect on driving for changes in personality is they can get easily angered at other people. Are they screaming, yelling? Are they, doing things that would be out of character for how they used to behave beforehand? Problems with abstract thinking, they can't problem solve construction. I brought this up when I did the presentation in person. I had an individual who I was seeing for a driving evaluation, and the road was clearly marked off as closed. And my directions were just to, follow the road signs and look for the detour. Despite that, she still did not turn where she was supposed to, and she took us down a road that clearly said no traffic and was blocked off. So I did get the client out of there, but there was some confusion. She did not understand that this meant we couldn't go through there. So when those types of situations occur, that is a real red flag that the people need to be paying attention to, because traffic is detoured for a reason, and they could be putting themselves into harm's way. Impairments in judgment, intersection management is the big thing. Are they going left on a red light, which is illegal? I know everybody has seen this lately, and I'm not sure why people are doing it, but making U-turns on red lights. Okay, you're not really allowed to do that. So is someone confused about what the rules are? If they don't understand, that's when the impairment in judgment affects your driving. Mobility, ability to get in and up, maybe they can't turn or twist. I know a lot of times we have good mirrors and cameras on the cars now, but that blind spot is a blind spot. And is somebody able to compensate for that or not? Maybe they're not able to quickly look to the left or the right when it is needed. Decreased ability to process visually and cognitively. I know we have had this many a time in the car. We might have an emergency vehicle coming up behind us. I had a client who didn't hear the emergency vehicle, even though it was right behind us, nor did they move to get out of their way. So here we are, as we're sitting, blocking the emergency vehicle, and they're not really understanding that we're supposed to, shift off to the side. No matter what, you're supposed to get out of the way so that emergency person can get through the intersection. So those types of things create a problem. All right, next. All right. This is a long list of things that you can, that you can be looking for and start kind of questioning in your own mind is, are there unexplained scratches or dents in the car? I mentioned that earlier. When you ask someone, how did that happen? And they don't really know, or they don't remember doing it. If they're having challenge, sorry, my screen went blank here. If they're unable, I am so sorry. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties on my end with my computer. If they're unable to let you know where they have been or what they've been doing, they drove around for hours and they get home or they get lost going someplace. I've had many clients, they've started going up to an appointment, usually might be like the hairdresser. They get turned around, they forget, and then they just come back home and they've never made it to where they're supposed to. Changes in ability to use their cell phone or technology. Some people have learned it. Some people have not. I know my mom, before she passed away, we got her an iPad, and it was a challenge for her. She was in her high 80s, but she wanted to learn how to use that iPad. So we spent little lessons. I would sit there with her, work with her on it. And by the time before she passed away, she was quite savvy at learning how to use it and could send messages, do her little pictures, save her recipes. So if someone has that knowledge base, but then they're unable to manage with it, then you can see that there's some changes in their cognition. Are there near misses, accidents, situations where they're getting honked at frequently, usually during lane changes, or they're sitting at a light and they're not moving, they're not processing? I know the other day I was with this client, and our light was burnt out at the intersection we were at, but the light right next to it was still working properly. So it went to green, and my person couldn't understand that even though our light was burnt out, that we still had a green light, that we could go, even though that part of it wasn't working. The red had been working, but the green was burnt out. And the cars behind her were honking because we weren't moving. But she was very fixated on saying, it's not there, so I can't go. So those types of things, if they happen, lend you to know that, okay, wait, this individual's having a challenge with processing what's really going on here. Not identifying their road signs or interpreting them and their lane. That's where the vision part comes into it sometimes too, or the ability with color discrimination is, can this person, even though the lines are not well marked, are they still able to stay in it? Are they shifting to the left a lot? Are they shifting over to the right a lot and not being able to stay properly? All right, go ahead. All right, so here's the hard part. So you see all these things that are going on, and it is kind of concerning to you as whatever role you have in these people's lives. But to start a conversation, it is, I probably think, one of the harder things to do. Most of us want to live in harmony. We love someone, we care about them, we don't want to upset them. But sometimes facing negative things that are going on is actually the truest act of caring, because you are allowing that person to know that you're worried, you're concerned. So it's not easy. So the hardest part is to actually initiate this conversation with them. You really do need to think about who is going to initiate this conversation. It has to be, I think, coming from someone who is an individual that person trusts. They may have, I'll go through. I know I have several sisters. It could be a particular child that one of the parents trusts more. It could be a cousin. It could be the doctor. Some people really value and respect their physicians' input, and they're of the mindset that it really does need to come from a doctor. So you need to choose wisely on who initiates it, because you could potentially make it a very challenging conversation, or one where the person then shuts their ears and they don't want to hear anything. And that's not what you want to happen. You want to have this open communication with that person. And it's so much better to start early before there really is an issue. When you do start these conversations with people, you kind of need to have your homework done to say, this is where we're at. These are the steps that we might need to take. If you really truly believe that person shouldn't be driving immediately when you're doing it, have other transportation options ready. How you communicate, don't be punitive or accusatory. And I do believe it's not necessarily that someone is older. It is the effects that the health is having on that individual. Like I said, we've had clients who are in their 90s here. They are spry with it. They drove really well. So it's not necessarily that age. It is what's going on with the individual. And if you can start early and initiate a conversation when you really need it, you have already laid the groundwork for yourself and your family member or whoever it is that you're assisting. All right, next slide. All right. So these are the things that can kind of start or spark the conversation. Is there a change in their health? You know, have they recently been diagnosed with a memory disorder? Do they have neuropathy? And for those who aren't aware of what neuropathy is, it is a lack of sensation or change in feeling that happens in your legs, hands. It doesn't really matter, but it does affect driving, more so with the feet. And it is linked with, sometimes by itself, idiopathic, or it could be linked with diabetes and such. So neuropathy is a big issue. It's a circulatory type thing. Arthritis maybe they've really had some changes in their hands, and their shoulders, their back. You know, it affects everywhere in the body. Vision, osteoporosis, I bring that one in, and cancer. My mom had osteoporosis. She ended up with, I can't even say how many kyphoplasties to her back. So she went from being taller than me, and I'm only 5 feet, so I'm not super tall. My mom was probably 5'5" as a kid. She was taller than I am. By the time she passed away, she was shorter than me. So she had shrunk quite a bit. So it really wasn't, with my mom, when we discussed driving, it wasn't so much her memory or vision what played a part in it. It was really more the fact that she had survived. She was a cancer survivor, her osteoporosis, and her changes in vision. And she was not really amenable to some conversations, but my mom was a sweet lady. So she put up with it from coming from me. And one day she just, you know, after I made a comment about her driving, I let her drive me around. I said something, and after that point, she just handed me the keys and said, "Why don't you just take over?" So she and I had a relationship. We made sure that we talked about it. She knew that I cared. She knew it was my job, and I wouldn't be saying these things unless I truly believed them. Um, Other topics, maybe somebody has a near miss. They might have had just an accident or a fender bender, may or may not have had a ticket, but their car has been damaged. And then another is changing their driving habits. Maybe they have stopped driving at night, and that was something that they always did. Maybe they limit where they're going to short distances in the daytime. So all of these things can give you an opening to talk to someone about driving. All right, next slide. So I did just mention my mom, but my dad, and the reason I put my sisters in there is my sister said, "No way are we talking to them about it." They took the back pedal. They said, "We're not doing it. We're not making our father angry." Because, you know, that was the roles that we had in our family. But I felt it was a little more important because my dad had a lot of health issues. And by the end, his mobility, it wasn't necessarily cognition, but his mobility was very affected. And it didn't go well. Honestly, he was more like, "You're the kid, I'm the adult. We don't really need to have this conversation." So your person that you're talking to, you have to know who they are as an individual too. You know, I don't know if it's just, I won't just blanket statement say it's men that are more challenging, but in some ways it is. I think women they've learned to flex a lot over life, you know, with kids or work, whatever. Sometimes they're a little flexible, but it still has the same importance to both. So it's how you approach it and who brings it up, which is important. All right, next slide. All right. So maybe you brought it up, but you don't want to be that individual who's making that decision, because you want to make sure that who you care about has the best opportunity, and it's not just what you're feeling and maybe keep it a little bit more impartial, because in some ways too, that keeps that family system or whatever it is, the relationship, in a more positive light. Instead of you saying, no, this is not going to happen. You're not going to drive anymore. You're going to let someone else kind of have some involvement in that. So a lot of people are concerned about HIPAA, confidentiality. To be honest, driving is one of those things when there are safety concerns, the HIPAA kind of has a little bit more flexibility, especially if you think there's a potential to do harm to themselves or someone else. All right. First place to bring it up, I always say, is bring it up with your physician or their physician. They should be able to have a conversation with that individual, especially neurologists. Some of the general practitioners are comfortable with it. But voice your concerns and have maybe some specific examples of why you are concerned. If that's one option, but having a driving evaluation with the CDRS, which is what I do at Brooks. So you can have a driver's evaluation because it really is impartial. It looks at information, how the person performs. If you're really concerned and the person has done things possibly behind the wheel, you have a lot of safety, you can report it to the Division of Motor Vehicles Medical Review Board. This is an anonymous reporting system in Florida. They do not tell the individual who has submitted them. They notify them via mail, provide them with paperwork that needs to be completed by their physician and turned back in. All of this is time sensitive. But that is one option that is open also, especially if they have significant and you think there's going to be a lot of backlash possibly. All right, next slide. All right, so the way the statute reads, it says any physician, person, or agency having knowledge of a licensed driver's or applicant's medical or physical disability that may affect their ability to drive may report the person to the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, which is what I mentioned before. When individuals go to renew their license, they are supposed to also ask them questions that might be red flag questions. Hopefully the individual answers truthfully. Some people do not. I know that from experience. But those are what Florida's reporting procedures are. All right, next. All right. So with this, because people are always worried about the legalities of things, the individual who submits the person cannot have any punitive damage taken against them. They can't be sued. The state can't be sued either. The motor vehicle agency will investigate, and they definitely want to make sure for valid claims versus non-valid, because some people will do that. But it can't be used against any civil or criminal trial against the information used against them. All right, next one. It's anonymous. All right. So what I do at Brooks is a driver evaluation. So if the state refers someone under medical review, they call it a CDE. So in the paperwork, it's called a certified driver evaluation. The reason to do it, it's third party, objective viewpoint. 98% of the time, I don't know who's coming in to the office. I might know a few. I've lived here in Jacksonville a long time, might know a few people, but for the most part, it's pretty objective. It's more comprehensive than what might be supplied by the state at a local office. A lot of the state, even the local DMV, is going to tell you they don't do those. They're going to tell the client, we don't retest someone's skills, and they might put them under medical review if they walk in there and ask for it because their physician has requested it. What it also does is starts a tracking system that helps identify how someone is performing right now and helps assist when the decision may need to be made to cease driving. I have seen clients, I think the longest might have been 5 or 6 years. So they came back every year. They were diagnosed with a memory impairment. They come back, they get retested. And I will say eventually the individual is told not to drive, but by that time they're seeing changes too, hopefully, but their family members are seeing them also. But it also allows us to compare how were you a year ago to where you are now, because changes can happen. They can happen in less than a year's time. But it also allows them to see the documented proof of what they were doing and how they are performing. So it does help a lot. Next slide. Yeah, go ahead. You're fine. So the difference between at the bottom of that one, it says what a CDRS is, and I really didn't explain it, but it's usually someone who's has a medical background and ability to look at the medical along with the driving. So it is a certification that takes, I think right now it's over, you have to have over 800 or 900 hours of actual client interaction before you can sit for the certification test. It's pretty stringent and difficult. So what we do in the assessment is we're looking at the individuals, their history. What's their driving history? Where do you go? What do you want to do? How long are you typically behind the wheel of the car? Even though people say, well, I'm just going from here to the store, a lot can happen from here to the store. So the distance sometimes isn't always the factor, or the fact that they don't drive on the interstate anymore. It's really what else is going on with them. We do what's called a DPT, which is a driver performance test. It's a video which is on driving type situations, a road sign test, a brake reaction. There's a vision screen. We do a couple of cognitive to look at memory and attention physically. And then the last part is an on the road assessment. All right, next slide. So in our on the road assessment, I noted on number 2 is that we use Brooks's vehicle for this. It is, a lot of people get worried that it's not their car. But part of it too is just being able to flex and adjust to something different. Most cars are fairly close: gas pedal, brake pedal, turn signal, wipers. So we do just use our vehicle more for safety purposes. Most people are given the opportunity to get behind the wheel. Even if they don't test poorly, or if they tested poorly, we still give them an opportunity in the car. My feeling is that you might have a poor test taker, but they still may actually drive pretty well and very functionally. And there's the flip side of that too, is that they may be a great test taker, but when they get behind the wheel of the car, that's when the decision making and the problem solving come out. And they may not be a good, effective driver. So it goes both ways. And that's why I'll say 95% of the time, we will take an individual into the car. There are the few that I have not over the years, more so because I deem it unsafe. It's just everything that is based on in the clinic, it is going to be hazardous to them and to myself. We have to go through different levels of driving. So the first phase is in the parking lot and backing up. Can you manage, navigate through here? And then we advance from residential all the way through interstate. Now, to clarify, if a client is not driving on the interstate, we will not typically take them on it. If they've eliminated it from their pathway, then we try not to put them in situations that they may or may not, that they probably wouldn't be driving in. However, the state, if there is someone under medical review, they do require that we take them through all levels of traffic. So even though the person may not drive on it, we do different merges that show how the person can integrate the car, manage the higher speed, and whether or not that's problematic for them. So we do try to make concessions, but we are kind of bound by what we're supposed to be testing and looking at. So the levels do depend upon the client's habits and their performance, okay? We're not going to necessarily advance to heavy traffic if the person is not managing light traffic. So we kind of try to keep that under control too. All right, next slide. All right. All these things that we do without thinking, these are the things that we are looking at when someone is actually driving. Are they stopping at the stop signs? Not California rolls, but actual stops. Are they beyond the lines? Are they behind where they're supposed to be at? Their brake reaction, are they responding in a timely manner, or is it way late and we're rolling too close to someone? Do they use their turn signals? In Florida, it really is the law. You're supposed to use your turn signal no matter what, even in a parking lot. Even when you're pulling into your driveway, you're supposed to use the turn signal. And it's really not for your sake, it's to tell everybody else what you're doing. So the turn signal is a big deal. Do they check for cross traffic? Are they looking ahead for hazards? Can they make right and left turns with and without lights? Management of yellow and red lights. Sometimes as we have approached a light, it's clearly yellow and the individual has more than enough time to be able to stop, but do they just go ahead and drive through it? So we're looking for those types of situations. Can they follow verbal directions? I know it's difficult. Sometimes people get left and right messed up. As long as we know these things ahead of time, there are ways, to modify instructions to help someone. But the essence is they still need to be able to process and understand where you want them to go. Are they leaving safe following gaps? Are they speeding? Are they too fast? Or are they too slow? Are they barely moving in traffic? All right, next one. Lane position is a big one too. So you can see in the picture on this one, what I find a lot of times is that people are drifting a lot to the left. They're crossing the line, which is extremely dangerous, or they're shifting too far to the right and they're in the bike lane. That's the other problem. All right, next. Intersection management, decision making. Those are all the things that we do. How are they doing when they're in the car? All right, next slide. So after everything is done, we typically will give a feedback session. I like to have not only the client there, but whoever the family is or the person who's with them. It is extremely important that more than one set of ears is hearing what is being said. I don't like it necessarily if someone just comes alone, makes it more challenging. There are several outcomes that can happen from a driver evaluation. First one is the client's still fine. They're safe. They did well in the clinic. They did, maybe they might have had one or two little issues behind the wheel, but for the most part, they're pretty safe. So it looks like they're okay to drive. And we would make a recommendation, based off the diagnosis, whether they need to come back in 6 months or to a year. Okay. So the time frame or exactly what's going on with the person is taken into consideration. The next thing is that they're functional, but they have some deficits. They might be okay to drive. The family might need to step in and monitor and reevaluate them in a shorter period of time. We might also ask them to stop or limit where they've been driving. Maybe this person, there was a question of whether or not they should drive on the interstate, and typically would say, don't do any interstate driving, don't do any nighttime driving. Florida does not have, like some states, where you can have those restrictions on your driver's license. So we have to be very careful how we word this with an individual, because those restrictions aren't allowed. And the way the state views it is, if that restriction is being requested, that person shouldn't be driving. All right. So we're real careful about how we state it. But also the person that we're talking to has to be cognitively sound to where they're understanding and they're going to follow what the requests are. So if the individual isn't going to be compliant, then that puts us in a different level, because that compliance is super important, because that person then is realizing, yes, I have challenges in A and B. I need to modify or step back a little bit. So if they don't have that, then we are going to fall into the next category, which is their skill levels were significantly declined to both the clinic and behind the wheel. They shouldn't be driving. And that we do as a practice, if someone should not be driving, we will submit it to the medical review board of the Division of Motor Vehicles so that they can start a medical case. The state is the one who will then review and figure out, as I stated earlier, whether the claim is a valid one and follow up with getting the correct documentation. We make the recommendation, but we also do put it in writing and make sure that the client understands that once we put it into writing, that the legality of it, you go and you do, and you still are going to go drive once you've been said you shouldn't. You may or may not have some legal issues if something happens, because people can get our medical records, and then they can use those against an individual if needed, unfortunately. All right, next. So not everybody, and I'll say not everybody being the client, and sometimes not everybody being the family, all right, may not be willing to comply, which places family or caregivers in an awkward position. But I'll step back for a second and say, sometimes the person that's being tested is the primary driver for that couple. And if that person isn't driving, there is no one driving in the home, which then opens a whole different avenue for them and their dynamics. So sometimes people don't want to hear information because of the big impact it's going to have. So that does make it more challenging. And that's where services like that Elder Source provides that are very necessary, because these individuals' lives are in a big flux. So if the person isn't going to be compliant, whoever is involved may have to disable the vehicle, remove the car from the home. I've had clients, people have unhooked the cables for the battery and such. That person's crafty enough, they've called and gotten the tow truck there and gotten it to the dealership. So you really have to know the problem solving skills of your person, even if they're not safe, that they may be able to figure out a way to get that car fixed. You may need to report the information to their insurance carrier, but there again, boundaries and such, that may or may not be something you want to step into. The bigger and better issue or thought process would be is to consider having a prior agreement when the person is first diagnosed. This is going to save you and them. So when this decision comes along, it's one that you have been talking about the whole time. You may have to have a written agreement between each other and say, yes, this is what we've agreed upon. And it might help alleviate a lot of stress and worry, so that when that hurdle has to be jumped, you already have a plan in place. You know what your options are with either Uber or Lyft or a home health agency or someone to come in and assist with that. If you have a plan, sometimes the I don't know what I'm going to do gut reaction can then be resolved a lot easier, because you've given it some thought, you've planned it out. And that's really what happens is people's instinct when they're told not to do something, especially if they think they should, is to lash out and to push back. It's just human nature. So if you can assist them in this process and make sure they understand things are going to be taken care of, it makes it a lot easier. We're fortunate today that there are so many more services that are available. You can get medications delivered. You can get food delivered. You can get even things that you need from Amazon delivered to the home. We have so much more avenue than what people used to have in the past, where they really had no means to get to the grocery store. These things can be worked around if there's some planning in it. Next slide. So with our evaluation, this is the hard part, is that insurance does not feel that driving is a necessity. We might feel it's a necessity because it provides so many things in our lives, but unfortunately, insurance doesn't. There is a cost for this evaluation, and I personally, it's not cheap. It's expensive. It's a lot of money for some people. I always say, if the family members are concerned, then maybe the family members can assist and help pay also. They shouldn't just push that back on their loved one. We do operate off of a physician's referral, so we need a script. I don't want it from someone who's really not involved in the care of the individual. We've had some weird scripts over the years. So really through the neurologist or the primary care or who's ever really managing all the medications that the person is on. The person has to have a valid license, or if they are under review and the license has been revoked, we work on getting that temporary permit for the individual. There is a step and a process to that, and it takes a little bit longer. I do like people to bring all their medications or to at least know what they're taking and why. And at the bottom there is the number to, if you desire to schedule. But typically the front desk would operate off of, once the referral is received, they would call the client or whoever is the contact person for the evaluation. Right, next. And so these are some things that you can do to help if your person is still driving. And some people are always concerned, you know, if in an emergency. Through the Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, it's called ICE. It's EIC, which is emergency ECI, emergency contact information. And what you can do is link that person's driver's license number to several people's phone numbers. I think there's you can have a limit of up to 3. So in an emergency, that person, you know, let's say they're not able to communicate well, the officer can pull up and look at their driver's license, pull it up, and then contact these people. It can be a lifesaver. It's very, very helpful. So on that one, and then on the next page, go to the next slide. There are several other ways. I'm going to skip. So you can have them take a driver safety course or a car tech even. I know a lot of new, if the person, maybe they just bought a new car and there's so much technology in them. I think a lot of these car dealerships will have little classes to help you teach you or the individual how to use the vehicle. You know, what are the features that are in it? I am a firm believer in AirTags, share my location. If you have an Apple phone, Life 360, so that you can track and follow. I bring this up a lot in an evaluation and will tell people you need to start stepping in and doing these things. Even if the person really doesn't, you've never done it before, it can be very helpful. Ride with your family member occasionally. Okay, have them drive to some place that you know is familiar. That's what I did with my mom. And after that last drive, she didn't drive again because her brake reaction was very delayed. And I said something about it. And once we got the car filled up with gas, she just gave me the keys and said, that's it. So ride with them, figure out if they're still good or if they're making some bad decisions, and start limiting where they drive to. You know, maybe they don't have to drive downtown to go to the symphony. You can get a ride share or go with them and drive them there and spend some quality time with your person too. But you might start making a pathway of where we are going to go and where you shouldn't be driving to. All right, next slip. Yep. And when driving is no longer an option, if the person is still able and cognitively able to manage it, there's Uber, there's Lyft. I think there's GoGo Grandpa or some. There's another one. There are lots of little ride apps that the person can be picked up and then dropped off. Find a Ride. There's Friends, churches, home health agencies. There are a lot of options. I know JTA is not listed on here, but they did a nice presentation when we did this in person about all the services that they have, which I personally was not completely aware of all of them. And so it is a service that is well worth looking into also, which would be the JTA services. All right, next slide. And these are just different references of where I got my information from. A lot of it, I should probably put me on there, to be honest, because a lot of this is almost 30 years worth of experience of doing driver evaluations, dealing with families, taking education courses, and learning along the way of what works and what doesn't work for people. And there's no real, in closing, there's no set way to approach this, but it does need to be addressed. I feel real strongly about driving, and I hope when I get to that point that my kids and I have a good enough relationship that they're going to say something, and that I myself will be open to that conversation. Just because I do the job doesn't necessarily mean that I might want to hear that information when it's time, but it is important. We want to keep our loved ones with us as long as we can. But I believe everything should be done with respect towards that person, towards their family, and that sometimes that really is the key thing too, is just treat it how you would want to be treated yourself. Be kind, be caring, approach it in a way that yourself personally is how you want to be spoken to. And that pathway will maybe open up the door for the conversation that you need to have. So, all right. I think that's about it. So, any questions?
Peggy, thank you so much.
You're
That's
welcome.
a lot of information to digest. And as I said, this is being recorded, and the resources that you mentioned will be shared, the links, and we've got a few other things. You mentioned JTA, so I will make sure that I have that information from the in-person
Yeah.
event, that we share that online as well. Beaches Dial-A-Ride, Heartfelt Ministries, those are all Duval County Beaches area resources that people can tap into. And there's a number of councils on aging, St. John's Council on Aging, they have their Sunshine bus system. So those particular resources will be added as well. Gabby, I didn't see any questions come in. Do you have anything
I don't.
to share? Okay. Well, I do. I've heard this presentation twice now, and there's certain things that resonated with me. And I think, Peggy, if there's two or three things you feel that you want to make sure people heard you, what would you emphasize with all the information that you shared today?
That's a hard one. I think I would want people to be open to the fact that at some point a person shouldn't be driving. That is the key. Maybe I didn't stress that, but there is going to come a time that is going to happen. But I do think the key thing is don't wait till the last minute when there's a problem. Approach earlier and keep the communication line open with your person so that when you have to say something, you're not going to be met with resistance. And then be in tune with what might be going on with them medically, because a lot of medical things kind of creep up with people, and they have, this doctor's doing that, this doctor appointment for that. And that having one person maybe is the key person that's the contact for them, and they're aware of everything that's going on with that individual, because I think some things get pushed off on the wayside. And we carry, like I said, luggage with us, medical luggage, cognitive luggage, emotional, how we want to be treated. So I think that would be the key is, approach it early, be respectful and mindful of what's going on with that individual.
Good. Those are all excellent. I have a few other little tidbits I want to share with the audience. And if you think of anything last minute, put it in the the chat box, and Gabby will speak up and let us know if there's anybody that has a last minute question. But I do want to share with you that there are several other caregiver programs available through ElderSource. We have a virtual caregiver support group. They meet weekly for about an hour, and it's time with other caregivers to share and compare and care with each other. I mean, sometimes I'm sure you're sitting at your kitchen table and you feel all alone. Well, this is a great safe space to be with others who understand the journey that you're on, that they're walking the walk. So, we have staff that facilitates this virtual caregiver support group. And we know that there are caregivers out there who it's very difficult for them to leave their loved one and take that break and talk to other caregivers. So this is a great space for that. T-Care, which is the Tailored Caregiver Referral Program, the bottom line is it prevents caregiver burnout. You have got to take care of yourself. And that phrase, which you've probably heard a million times, you can't pour from an empty cup. And when your cup is full and you're taking care of yourself, then you know that you can be a better caregiver for your loved one. And of course, then you're taking care of your own health. So this T-Care program, we've got a wonderful grant through the Humana Foundation that respite hours are offered to you, mental health counseling is offered to you, but it gives you a care plan to figure out what your stressors are that you can then be mindful of what's going to make you the whole and healthy for yourself so you can be that good caregiver. The GUIDE program, which is something that's relatively new that we are offering, it's Medicare's new Guiding and Improved Dementia Experience, and it offers coordinated care for patients and caregivers. If you have traditional Medicare, it's traditional Medicare, not an Advantage plan, you are eligible for this program, which includes 24/7 helpline. It can be available to you through some respite, a care coordination plan. So it's a great thing to know. These things, the first three, of course, are available through ElderSource. And we are launching, starting in September, a new class. It's not new to us. We've done it before, but we got a wonderful grant. It's called Powerful Tools for Caregivers. It's evidence-based and it's offered virtually, again, for caregivers to take better care of themselves. I think it's 6 weeks, over the course of 6 weeks. It's virtual. You've got a workbook. And again, it's a great tool for you to have as a caregiver. How do you access any of or all of these? Starting with our helpline, or you can email our caregiver support team at caregiversupport@myeldersource.org. These are valuable tools for you. And again, just calling the helpline and saying, I think I need certain kind of resource. Our helpline staff are amazing. They take about 5,000 calls a month. So that's a big wow. And so we do ask you, leave a message. We'll get back to you, and they're working as efficiently and as quickly as they can. But they're a great group of people, and they've heard it all. And they're out there to help the families and caregivers as our mission to live and age independently and with dignity in your home for as long as you possibly can. We have got an amazing group of professionals who are our Caregiver Coalition members. Here they are. They are on our website. Everybody's got a website of their own. So I'm giving them a shout out. They're the ones who help plan all of these workshops. So please tap into any or all of them. They're great resources for you and your family. Thank you for joining us today. I will be sending out the recording and the resources, and then we'll also be having a little survey attached that because we're beginning to plan for 2027 already. So we welcome any kind of feedback that we have. Gabby, were there any other last minute folks that had questions in the chat? Nope.
No last minute
Okay, well,
questions.
don't be shy. By all means, we are here to support you and caregivers. So thank you so much, Peggy. You always do such a
thank
great
you.
job.
Thank you,
We
Peggy, yes.
appreciate you sharing your time because I know you're super busy. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and look for the new and then the next series for the Easier Said Than Done. Thanks. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Okie doke.